Good morning and welcome to our July 17th, 2023 Board of County Commissioners Budget Workshop meeting. It's actually a Monday if you're following along at home. We're going to review our budget. We have our constitutionals here to share their information as well, and then we'll go through department by department. I would like to call the meeting to order, and we would begin with an invocation by Pastor Aaron Meehan from the Higher Purpose Pentecostal Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. And if you would all please rise. Good morning, Pastor.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to come and offer this invocation. It's always a privilege to be with you, and this is such an important time for us to come together. You are in the people business, as I am, and sometimes it doesn't feel like that, dealing with budgets and numbers and all that. But at the end of the day, we're in the people business, and that can sometimes be frustrating and not always a thankful job or a job that you get offered praise for. I recall when I was a little younger, I was a youth pastor. I'm young now, thankful. But I was younger even still, and I was a youth pastor at a church. I found myself being very frustrated over just dealing with some of the young people and some of the others, just discouraged. And I did something that I don't always suggest you do. It doesn't always work, but I did what I call the blind finger test. That's where you just desperately need encouragement. So you just grab the Bible, close your eyes, swing it open, and slam your finger down. And I did that this one day, just desperately needing encouragement. I closed my eyes, swung the scriptures open, slammed my finger down, and my finger landed on 1 Corinthians 15:58, where it says, "To always abound in the work of the Lord, for as much as ye know that your labor is not in vain in the Lord." And if I can just offer a quick encouragement to you and the others who are here in this great work for this wonderful county, to always abound in this work and know your labor is not in vain, and that you are doing great work, and I thank you, and the people do thank you. So in my prayer, I'm going to pray a blessing over the work that we're doing in this meeting today and your continued work after this meeting. If we could bow our heads. Lord, we thank you, Jesus, for this opportunity to come together for our county, for our people. We pray that you would bless this meeting. Let there be peace. Let there be joy. Lord, we pray that you would bless every bit of work, everything that must be discussed, including the budgetary processes and the other speakers who will be here today. We pray your blessing over this meeting and their continued work. And I ask that you encourage them today to know that we thank them and that you are with them. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much.
I pledge allegiance. Thank you, Pastor, very much. Just as a informational, this is our budget workshop meeting. The purpose of this workshop is to establish our tentative millage. The tentative millage will be set hopefully at the end of the day or the end of this meeting, unless for whatever reason the meeting continues until tomorrow. And with that, I will turn it over to our county administrator, Mr. Don Donaldson.
Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Commissioners. We will going to start off by giving you a brief presentation on how the budget was put together, some pertinent facts on our community related to revenues and expenses. Concluding that, I'll have a few additional remarks, and then we'll go right into the review of the budget items. So we'll start with Ms. Jennifer Manning, and I'll join her.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is Jennifer Manning, OMB Director. The presentation will include an overview of the major revenues, the tentative budget revenues and expenditures, the basis for the budget development, the tax analysis, as well as the impact based on July 1 valuation, the FY24 budget development summary, and prior year impacts, and the basis for recommendation. We have three sets of major revenues, and the first one we'll talk about is the local revenues. Those revenues include ad valorem, impact fees, building permit fees, ambulance fees, development review fees, and so forth. The ad valorem revenues are budgeted at 95% based on state statutes, and generally we collect anywhere from 85 to 90% between November and December. So the lion's share is collected before January or February. At this point, we have collected all our ad valorem taxes, and we're at 101%. Oops, sorry. Our impact fees are collected at bill and permit issuance, and that's based on changes made a couple of years ago. We do not budget those impact fees until we have collected it. So we're very conservative with our budget. And, you know, when you look back in 2005, we were collecting over $15 million. And we're currently, in 2022, we collected $5.4 million. Our bill and permit fees are pretty much in line with what our projections are. It's only 2% above. The ambulance fees are definitely trending or outpacing our expected amount, and that's due to increased call loads as well as enhanced collection changes. The tourism tax is doing phenomenally, but I mean, it's an increase due to high demand and a higher anticipated average daily rate. As far as development review fees, it is trending higher, and, you know, we're conservative with that as well, but we are getting a lot more applications for development review. The franchise fees are high, and that's based on increase in the rate and the electric cars. Sailfish Splash is in line with expected budget, but we are expecting it to exceed by the end of the year. Our interest rate is definitely outpacing what we projected, and that's based on the investment opportunities and the changes in the market. And like last year, the last couple of years, we've been investing at about less than 1%. For this year, we're at 4%. And of course, it's also contingent on how much funds we have available. And then I'm going to move on to we have these slides that's just in the presentation for informational purposes. And those are just the major revenues. The next revenues, did you want to look at all the slides or you just later on? No, okay. All right, so the next set of revenues is the state revenues, and those are projected by the state. Some of the revenues are 2 months behind. For example, the half-cent sales tax and the fuel taxes, they are 2 months behind, and communication tax is 1 month behind. We've been seeing that the communication tax it's just slightly higher than projection. The revenue sharing is definitely much higher than we have projected. And we are very conservative with the revenue sharing and half-cent sales tax because of past experiences. And the same thing with half-cent sales tax. The fuel taxes, we are, seeing a steady decline of those fuel taxes, and mainly due to electric cars. And this has resulted in gradually shifting some of our revenues to the road MSU that are related to road MSU because we don't have an alternative revenue source at this time. And these are also slides that represent the communications tax, revenue sharing. As you can see, our collections over the years. Half-cent sales tax, and you can see it outpacing what our projected amounts are. And the gas tax, it just goes up, it's either going down or going up slightly. So we know it's not a sustainable revenue source for the future. The next set of revenues, and these are the final set of major revenues that I will be presenting, is the water and sewer utilities, as well as the garbage assessment and the golf course. So the water and sewer charges, and that's based mainly on having new customers added to the system. And the garbage collection assessments, those are budgeted at 95%, and as added new customers to the base. Sailfish Sands, you can see it is outpacing the projected amount. I just want to mention that those revenues are just based on course revenues, not any club or anything like that. And these are the slides that represent those revenues. Now we're going to go into the budget development. Why are we here? The Florida statutes require us to be here. The county administrator has the powers and duties to prepare and submit a budget to the county commissioners in consideration for the adoption of the operating budget, and capital program. And the FY24 tentative budget was submitted to the board as a working document, so we can change it at any time during this workshop or at the public hearing. And changes will be made throughout the day, or if we go into the 18th, we will also change it then. The total revenues and expenditures. The total revenues for the tentative budget is $643 million, and that represents ad valorem for general fund, as well as the MSTUs, local sales tax. It has assessments, franchise fees, a large amount for miscellaneous revenues, which includes water and sewer and ambulance fees and so forth, and then you have revenue sharing. The total expenditures is also $643 million, and that represents 19% for personal services. We have 28% for operating expenditures. The capital budget is 11%. The debt service is only 3%. The constituted officers are 19%. Transfers and reserves is at 20%. So the budget development includes the tentative CIP that was approved in April. And just to let you know that the numbers are based on July 1 evaluation. We went that increased a little bit over 12%, and the total ad valorem for general fund as well as MSTUs equated to about $31 million. These are the taxable values for the various taxing authorities, and as I mentioned, the countywide and the MSTUs went slightly over 12%. And when we look at the districts, they went from for District 1, 11.6, 12.2 for District 2, 13.7 for District 3, 10.9 for District 4, and 11.82 for District 5. Okay, so the budget development, of course, I mentioned the July 1 values was based on July 1 values, and funding the constitutional officers. The departments maintain the same level of levels as FY23, with the exception of the cost of doing business, such as contracted services, as well as electricity and any other board-directed increases. We also look at the full-time equivalent positions, and just to note that if those positions are requested because of increased workloads as well as enhancements, and there are some fees that are covering most of those positions. And then, of course, the capital project. So the total ad valorem impact for the tentative budget is $43.9 million. The percent of increase is allocated amongst the countywide, which is 78% of that amount. And then the fire and the other road MSUs are 22%. The itemized ad valorem impact coming up will be the capital improvement plan, the constitutional office's requests, the BOCC requests as well as the BOCC departments. And I just wanted to note that for the BOCC departments, we did not use any of the increased values for FY from the July 1 valuation. And the reason for that is we had fees that, we increased some fees for services, as well as reoccurring debt service from paying off debt obligations. So we paid off the debt, and then we had the reoccurring funds that helped to absorb some of those increases. The capital improvement, the capital projects presented to the board in April was roughly $12.9 million. After looking at one-time expenses, we were able to reduce it by roughly $1.1 million, and that's because we're looking at, for revenues, for example, like the ad valorem revenues, we collected more than anticipated, so we could use those funds for one-time expenses. So that brought that revised the capital projects to $11.9 million. The constitutional officers, which includes judicial, the sheriff requested $16.4 million. Supervisor of election, $379,000, and that's mainly due to being election year next year, and those usually go back down the following year. The tax collector was $305,000. The clerk of the court, $290,000. The property appraiser, $153,000. Inmate care contract, $1.6 million. We had to have a new contract written. The mental health court, which was requested on a presentation in July, I think it was May, as well as prior to that, $450,000. And then E911 is $419,000. So the total requests for constitutionals is $20 million. And I just wanted to note also that the increase in the value for the countywide is $22 million. So on the board side, we had technology requests, which was $2.1 million. And then we have the CRA obligations, which is $1.9 million. The property insurance, this is just a portion of the property insurance that could not be absorbed by other revenue sources, $765,000. The FRS impact, which is unfunded liability, was $725,000 just for countywide. And so the total countywide request for board is $5.5 million. The total impact overall between the county and the judicial and the constitutionals is $25.5 million. We were able to reduce the impact of the technology requests. And I just wanted to know that the technology request is a mandate from legislation that changed last year, and we have to have those technology software. Sorry.
Commissioner Heatherington.
On that technology, did they give us a timeline? Does it have to be completed
Yes.
by 2024?
Yes, by January of 2024, yes.
So it was
The
mandated
cybersecurity.
by the state,
Yes.
and it had to be completed by 2024?
Yes. Mhm. Yeah, for cybersecurity.
That's a steep one to be completed in a year.
I know, right? No, because it started since last year, so they said by January of 2024, yes. So we were able to reduce, again, using the one-time revenues that we know we have, by $945,000, and we reduced the technology portion of it. So the revised amount is between the capital, for this is $24.5 million. And this is just a visual of what the pie looks like of everybody included for requests for the impact to the countywide fund. And as you can see, the lion's share is the sheriff as well as the CIP. The other requests are pretty small, with exception, of course, inmate medical and then, the property insurance and CRA. Good one? Okay. Impacts to the ad valorem impacts to fire, parks, stormwater, and roads equates to $7.6 million, of which we have contract obligation for fire rescue and FTE impact of 4.4. We have the FRS unfunded mandate impact of $2 million, and the fire portion of the CRA is $403,000. The cost of doing business, fuel, and equipment, and this is only on the MSTU side, increased by $182,000, and this is not fire, this is for road and stormwater. There is an urban tree canopy audit that is $80,000, as well as streetlight and other maintenance that increase to $236,000. Mowing and landscaping is $272,000 requests. And this pie represents what those requests look like. Okay? And speaking of the FRS impact, they went up for the regular rate, it's 14%. And then for special risk, which is very significant, 17%, and 3% for elected officials, 9% for senior management, and 14% for drop. And overall, and I'm not talking just fire rescue and countywide MSTU, the impact was roughly over $3 million for FRS, unfunded mandate. That went from year to year. The tentative budget reserves, we're required by our fiscal policy to have 10% reserves, and we currently have that reserve in place for the general fund. And there's also reserves that is required for building, utilities, and solid waste of up to 1 year, and that is also met. This is the general fund. This is all the reserves that is in the total budget. And you can see the general fund has 22.6 million overall, and all the other respective funds have their reserves. So we have our salary reserves, we have contingency for certain funds, and future capital and so forth. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so in summary, the proposed budget includes funding as constitutional officers, a capital improvement plan that was tentatively approved, investing in our employees, and we look at our contracted obligations and various evaluations, and then the funding of the property insurance, the CRA, FRS unfunded mandate, and the prior board direction. So, for example, the mental health court was like prior board direction, and maintain the level of service for various departments. And with that, I will entertain any questions. And I know Mr. Donaldson would like to speak.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Manning on the presentation thus far? None at this time. Mr. Donaldson?
Thank you, Commissioners. As Ms. Manning presented, when you look at the total budget and including the few reductions in ad valorem requirement that Ms. Manning pointed out in the CIP and the technology program, it would require a millage increase of 4.582%. And so should the board want to lower that millage rate, keep in mind our budget is largely driven by staffing needs and just simply inflation to insurance and all the other things put together, that staff is prepared to assist either during or at the end on how we might achieve that. My recommendation is that in the general fund is the primary category which you would find reductions and mostly in the capital where we added new funds in our capital program. I think it's also important to remote and repeat that the county departments that are reliant upon general fund did not require any increase in millage to support their budgets. And there's two reasons for this, and Ms. Manning pointed out as well, is that the staff, and with your approval, the paying off of debt with some of our increased revenues last year through fund balance and some of those other fees, that the departments did have some increases but did not rely on any growth in our tax base to pay for them. In addition, our Parks Department, which has had some enterprise-like projects going on, have kind of hit their stride and has generated enough revenue where they didn't need even $1 of new reoccurring revenue to fund their operation. So that's I think those are significant items to point out. But also, I think it's important to note that your departments are lean, and I think your library is a good example of where they are in terms of, as you know, we're all competing for staff or staff positions, while, and even when we're fully staffed, we're still a lean organization. And I think Jen Salas's comments the other day that they have, some of their libraries, if they have more than 2 people out, they have a contingency, they may have to close their library. So I think we're lean and mean in that respect. I think the budget presented to you is one that is the cost of providing those services. And so that's, again, where I point to the fact that our capital budget is principally where I would look to do any reductions if we were going to look at that. And with that, we'll take any questions or go into our presentations.
Questions for Mr. Donaldson? Mr. Donaldson, before we begin, I did not ask if there was any public comment prior to the beginning of both of your presentations. So at this time, I would take, if anyone is here from the public that would like to address us before we begin this process. Seeing none? Yes. We're going to start with the constitutionals, correct, Mr. Donaldson?
Okay, and I just wanted to point out, I have spoken to all the constitutional officers with the exception.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Sorry, with the exception of the sheriff, the other constitutional officers, I told them that we did not need a formal presentation because of their impact. It was not significant.
Understood. but
Wanted to make sure that everybody knew that's,
I would afford any of them the opportunity to come
Yes,
forward
yeah,
and
if they wish,
share any
yeah.
information. It's a good opportunity, even if it's not necessarily budget request related. But if they had something that they'd like to share, would be a great opportunity to do that before we begin. Commissioner Smith.
Mr. Chair. Don, just I guess a quick starting point where we are. So if we were to have a 4% plus or minus increase in our ad valorem, what would that require from the board in terms of voting?
It would require a unanimous vote.
I knew that. I just wanted to kind of set the stage for that conversation. Because when you said that we may have to work on reductions one way or the other, I think just as long as everybody understands that whether we can get there or we can't get there determines how today will shape up. Is that fair?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, before we begin, let's also, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the budget as, excuse me, that would be easy, right? Just do it. Motion to adopt, did you say opposed? Well, at least we cut right to the chase. Motion, the budget passes, let me guess.
Chair, move approval of the agenda.
That's what I like, thank you.
Second on the agenda.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Smith to approve the agenda. Seconded by Commissioner Heatherington. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? We're off to a good start. That was a unanimous decision. We're setting the pace for the whole entire day. Commissioners, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
Nope. All set.
Don, you already made your comments?
I did.
Fantastic. We will begin with our sheriff.
Ms. Woods?
She's not on my list. The sheriff and his financial team is here. Sheriff, as always, it's an honor to have you here.
You're very safe.
Yeah, probably the safest room in the county today. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for all
very
that you
much, Chairman Campy, Vice Chairman Jenkins, Commissioner Hurd, Commissioner Heatherington, and Commissioner Smith, Administrator Donaldson, our good Sarah Woods, and our budget lady has walked off, so thank you to her, too. I was thinking of the pastor's opening remarks about opening the Bible and finding a scripture. I've tried that once or twice. It always opens to Leviticus. If you want to try to find inspiration in Leviticus, please tell me how you did it. But I believe that, yeah, we could find inspiration anywhere, but that's been my experience with that. I also, I'm here today with our staff. You've already introduced Kevin Youngblood, our Chief Financial Officer, my Chief Deputy, John Budenseek, and our staff are here to help me answer questions if there are any. I was thinking as I come up here, I have some constitutional responsibilities, of which the primary one, in my opinion, is conserving the peace, obviously. But not far behind is I'm obligated by statute to present a budget by a certain time. And so as I stand before you this morning, I'm keenly aware that our request is large. There's no way to obfuscate that, to soften it. It is exactly what I just said. It's a big increase. We are an expensive industry. I think I've said that before. We started the budget process months ago. Every single entity in the sheriff's office submits budget requests. So we have what I consider a zero-based budget, a legitimate one. We don't carry over from one year to the other. We sit down and entity by entity. So I mean sergeants supervising a squad, to the lieutenant supervising a platoon, to the captain supervising a division, and so on. That's our strategy. We sit down, and at a grassroots level, at the base of the sheriff's office, we go about identifying needs. And then that's our format. So then we'll start off with an unshaved on budget. Kevin, do you remember what the first number that rolled in was?
About 102.3 million.
The big one, before we started paring
It
down.
was, I think, almost 118 million, almost
118 million dollars worth of requests that each one of those entities felt was important. So our process of getting to where we are now was pretty laborious. It was thought out, and we asked the question over and over again. We legitimately asked this question: do we have to have this, or is it just nice to have? And that's a difficult one in law enforcement, because even nice to haves can make the job, we can make us more effective. And we whittled down, so what would that, Kevin? How much did we whittle down?
a little over 16 million.
So 16 million came off of all of those requests. And so we're left this morning with what I'm going to present to you. This should be a pretty quick presentation. You all have had the budget. I've talked to some of you. No, as a matter of fact, I talked to all of you prior to going into the budget. Our county administrator has been extremely helpful. Don, thank you so much for your guidance. We've listened to you. We've moved just recently. You came back and said, look, could you help us here? And we looked at what we thought was our minimum and then took $750,000 off of that by deferring some of our hires. A lot of what you'll see today in the increases, I'll be able to explain on a slide in just a minute. I'd like to start off with a video that we made for recruiting purposes. But I think what I wanted you to see was how complex law enforcement is in the modern era and what goes into what we do. It's impossible for me to adequately convey to you all the nuances of what goes on. I listened to the morning report. We had double overdose during the night. One of them was a fatality. One of them expired. Morning after morning, we have an unbelievable level of unlicensed drivers in this county. So from overdoses to unlicensed drivers to one of our deputies, a female deputy, the other night stopped someone who was leaving the scene of having opened fire on a house in Palm Beach County, and by God's grace was able to get through that and make an arrest. But in any given second during our 24 hours that we protect this community, things can go terribly bad. So that's the thought behind what Kevin's about to start for us. And this will be short.
911, do you need police, fire, or medical?
Police emergency immediately.
Okay.
My husband just shot 2 people and I believe he killed them.
Good 10, signal 4. Good 10, signal 4. Roll over.
Air 1 SO, see if we can ascertain where the suspect went, which direction. I'm looking for him now.
Ma'am, tell me exactly what's going on right now. Okay, he's not breathing right now?
It's a 9-month-old baby. It's all real. This isn't my TV. This is real. William Snyder, Sheriff of Martin County, where our motto is one team, one fight. The fight is here, and the team is waiting for you. Thank you, Kevin. This is,
If you have any applications with you,
They're all online.
motivated a couple of us to sign up. You take old people?
they let me work there. So this is our budget, Commissioners. I think the slide is up now. Real fast, you see it. Law enforcement, which is the bulk of what we do, that's all of our road patrol and everything you saw. Some of the representation of what we do in that presentation is 68 million plus. Corrections, the Martin County Corrections Facility is at 25 million. Judicial, just keeping the courthouse safe, the judges safe, is 4.5 million. The School Resource Officer Program, and it's 1.8. Not the format, but I really would love to have an in-depth discussion with the board, talking about that, talking about our share, your share, the ad valorem share of that, and which I do think we could do better as far as getting the school to help more. That 1.8 is offset some, that the money for the SROs is already out that they pay. This is ours on top of the schools. But the
What's the
percentage of what we pay
Sheriff,
overall.
Excuse me, what's the percentage? Is it 50/50 between the county and the school district?
No, it's not, Kevin.
Yeah, we pay about 36%.
And they pay
The
the,
school district pays 3 million compared to our 1.8.
okay. And what about crossing guards?
That is full bore. on the
100%.
sheriff's.
Us?
100%. And I don't want to get off track, but I really do think we could talk about that. Like, who really should pay for school crossing guards? And how much more of the budget should the school board take? I get that it all comes from the same taxpayer base, but for county purposes, it seems to me that the buckets should represent the user. And none of the numbers here represent the administration that goes into putting those school resource deputies out there. I have 31 personnel in the school, and that's all law enforcement. That doesn't touch the administration that trains them, that keeps the cars running. It just doesn't. So we'll talk about that. And we can talk about it now if you want, but anyway. And then animal control is at $500,000. There's the total budget. So we look at that number, I look at that number, and I really, I know what it means. I saw the slide. I saw a percentage. It's out there. The public sees it. We see it. You see it. You'll have to raise the taxes. We have to use the tax base to fund it. I've said before, I was an appropriator once. I know what it feels like. I think you have a very difficult job because the question will recur over and over. You'll say to yourself, on every single one of the people that come up here, the recurring question will be, is what you bring to the table worth the cost? That's the question. And let me try to just barely answer that with the next quick presentation, after which I'll be winding down.
Oh, shit!
I'm always careful not to be dramatic for dramatic's sake. I get that that's a dramatic piece of film. But I'm trying to answer the question, which is so difficult for all of us. What are we worth? I guess that depends on who you ask, what are we worth? If you ask that man, who is a hair's breadth away from death, as a matter of fact, the polyester shirts were starting to melt on those deputies. It's a lot hotter there than it would, here. But the cost of getting that boat in the water, the cost of helicopters that can go out, it's expensive. But when we're trying to answer the question, is it worth it? I think that really depends on who you ask. If you ask that boater, yes. If you ask the business owner whose business is flourishing because people come in and say, I feel so safe in this county, I think he or she would answer yes. If you ask the mother who's anxiously waiting every day to make sure their child gets off the bus safely and was safe all day, I think she would answer the question. Yes, I think the person trapped in an overturned vehicle, we've had one since I met you last, upside down in the water, about to die. Our guys went in, our guys and gals, alligator-infested water, broke glass, pulled them out. I have more video to show than any of you would have time to watch. But the answer from those people is yes. The question for you is, well, how do we fund it? And so I prayerfully considered what I did here. I'm not just saying that. And I prayerfully consider your difficulties dealing with this kind of appropriation. And I think with that, I would be pleased to end the presentation and answer any questions I might be able to.
Thank you very much, Sheriff. Questions for our sheriff? Commissioner Hurd.
Yeah. Thanks, Sheriff. As always, a terrific presentation. And you know that I esteem you and that I respect you and value you and your department, and you do a fantastic job. You know, I have absolutely no reservations about saying that I think that you're the best sheriff in Florida. But I do have to fund an entire budget. And every department is critical. Every department is necessary. Social services, roads, stormwater, all these fire rescue, all these departments are absolutely essential services that we provide. So we need to be able to make them sustainable. We need to make sure that when the bottom drops out, that we're going to be able to continue to provide those well-rounded services. And we've been on an inflationary direction for the last several years. Values are skyrocketing. It looks like there's no end in sight, but there always is. There's always a crash. And I don't know what's going to precipitate it or when it's going to happen, but I know that it's going to happen. And we have to be situated at that time to be able to continue to operate and to provide all those services. And the 18% contract increases just are not sustainable. I wrestle with this. I look at our stormwater department, and if there's a Hurricane Katrina or an Andrew or a Dorian or an Ian headed your way, you hope and pray that your stormwater department is the best in the world. And I know that they are. They're getting 3% raises. They're some of the hardest working people and the lowest paid people in the county. So inflation hits that department harder than it does anybody else. And yet, when those hurricanes are barreling toward landfall here, I know that they're going to respond and they're going to be the best stormwater department in the world. So I'm not going to be supporting your budget. It's no reflection on you or the service that you provide. We just need to tighten our belts a little, or a lot.
I know you to be an honorable and good commissioner and a fiscal conservative. I completely respect your position, and thank you.
Sheriff, let me chime in. I don't disagree with what I heard from my colleague. However, there is heavy lifting that needs to be done. I think when you made your presentation that you looked at your original budget with all of the wants and needs, and you said, here it is. And then we all know who you are. We know your team. You start shaving it back and shaving it back. My personal philosophy, and I have never run into residents that have disagreed with me, that they feel the first dollar that they spend in their taxes is for public safety. I know that it's expensive. I know that the contracts, the numbers are high. And if, just like everyone else, when you first hear those employment contract negotiation salary numbers, they're very surprising until we have the advantage of hearing how the process breaks down, whether it's you, and we're going to hear from Fire Rescue, and our other employees, of course. But public safety is what the residents expect of us, first and foremost. All of the other departments, the departments that Commissioner Hurd mentioned, absolutely important. We'll be hearing from them and seeing them face to face later today. But the public demands, and appropriately so, safety. And when those hurricanes come, the people that are out patrolling the streets in catastrophe is your team and Fire Rescue. So yes, I'm an employee at a regular job. I am a hired employee for a boss. And there are different positions and levels within that company. Some make more than I do, some make less. We all fall into the category. That doesn't mean that my work, my worth to my boss or any of our employees to us or your employees to you, they understand that where they are. That's how it works. So yes, I thought that the budget requests were high, but when I sat down and reviewed them, had an opportunity to speak to you, had an opportunity to see your team work, I'm okay with those numbers because I think the public wants it and expects it. I think if we didn't do it that way, if you were not staffed properly, if you were not trained properly, if you were not equipped properly, and something terrible happened, immediately everyone would look to you and say, why didn't you have that? How could you not be prepared? And at that point, like you showed in that video, which I thought was about the sailboat at least, at first I couldn't tell what was happening there. And, you got two of your personnel trying to lift what looked like a pretty heavy person up through whatever that's called on the top of a boat, straight up with their own strength. So now, if there was only one person there of your personnel, that person dies. And then we say, well, the budget fell in line and it was appropriate. We were lean and mean. And what is the response? Now, maybe this, like you said, you're always careful not to look like doom and gloom. I still remember the video you showed us a couple of meetings ago at the jail. And I had the opportunity of being at the jail. I think it's important that our public understands that when whatever the department does an excellent job, it somehow looks easy and it doesn't require the personnel, effort, training, equipment that's necessary. So I will be supporting your budget as the largest piece of the budget. And there are certain things that we will be able to maneuver around this week, today, and in the months before we finalize the budget completely. We'll make hard decisions, but some of those decisions do not require life and death decisions to be made. And so, I trust you and value you personally and professionally enough to know that you and your team brought forward the budget that you think is completely appropriate, and I won't second-guess your professional opinion. Commissioner Heatherington.
I would echo some of those sentiments because I think you posed a good question, is it worth the cost? Because any resident that I ever talk to, public safety is something that they're not willing to negotiate or have a lower level of service. Now, the budget increase is a lot, and your piece is a lot, but the overall budget itself, it's a lot to go and face the average resident and say a 4.5% increase on the top of what they've probably had a 50 to 100% increase in homeowners insurance and some of these others. So we have work to do, but public safety is something that our residents have said that they're not willing to negotiate a level of service. And I know we've talked, you did a very compelling presentation a month or two ago on mental health. Is some of this particular budget addressing some of those issues? I know we talked about jail pod, which is a long-term endeavor, but is there a mechanism that we can help you to start saving for a long term? Because we know that's not going to be a year, 1 year hit, and it's going to be significant and expensive. And we'd like to see if we can address that over time so we don't have a big shock.
But, yeah, thank you for that question, Commissioner. I think there's a couple questions in there. We have, I think this might answer part of it. We have formed a study group, a staff study, including multiple personnel representatives from the county staff, and we are diligently working towards coming up with a comprehensive proposal of what this will cost. I've also reached out to our legislative team, which isn't too hard for me, but I've talked to a lobbyist. I'm trying to get the train on the track to move towards being able to have a coherent presentation for a mental health wing at the jail. Maybe the second part of your question is, as we try to turn down this, or reduce the impact of mental illness and narcotics use in this county, and I say them both because they're conflated. You can't pull one off without the other. People are self-medicating. Almost every dollar in that budget is affected by the crisis in our communities today. Unlike a hurricane, Commissioner Hurd, which we see coming, we can kind of think through. That's really an operational challenge. My challenge is that we have a systemic problem with the culture in America today, not to go off the rails, but it so impacts the children, the suicide rate, the breaking up of the family, the challenges in our school system, the depression that people have today that manifests itself in drug abuse, drug overdoses, alcoholism. If I didn't have alcohol and drugs in this county, I could cut that budget way down. I could cut it less than half. That's the driving force on what you're seeing here today. And so that's what we deal with, and we are consciously trying to turn that down. We're doing more and more with Marchman Acts, more and more with Baker Acts, trying to get people into a plan that we don't have to have constant repeat calls. I hope that answers your question.
And one more thing. Thank you for that. We talked about the SROs and the school crossing, and I know some of that's mandated, particularly SROs in schools, and some of it's paid. Have we had that conversation? Do we need to have that conversation at a joint meeting on how this is funded? Maybe my colleagues have had it before my time here, but it seems to me a real conversation. I get it. The average taxpayer that pays their taxes at the end of the year, it's still coming out of the same pot. But just as far as equity, I think it's a conversation that should be had.
Well, I'm wide open to any form you would like. We are talking about it, and I'm kind of over a barrel because I have a contract with them, and so in between the contract and then we have to jointly agree here, and I have to get the school board to buy in. At the end of the day, no matter what, I have to be in there. That's a state law. We are still recovering from that state law as far as manpower. We lost 30-something, well, some of those were already SROs, but we had a lot of positions that we had to add to our budget because of the Stoneman Douglas murder.
So what is the term of that contract? When does that get renegotiated?
I believe we have 2 years left. We're in the middle of 2 option years, so we do have, I believe, until June of 2025.
So then the conversation has to happen between now and now for the 2 years from now. Well, I think that would be a good conversation to have at our joint meeting. My colleagues agree that we could put it on the agenda.
We agree. Anything else? Commissioner Hetherington, anything else?
No.
Commissioner Smith?
Sure. Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, as always. I think my comments are more about the mechanics of all this and how all this works. And the reason why I asked Dawn about what would be required to get to our budget as presented, having a supermajority, is that that's really not super, a unanimous majority. And that's something I think that the legislature is going to have to grapple with and change. You and I have talked before, and the idea or the thought of there's X amount of new revenue in the county. And if we are to use that new revenue, how does it get divided, and how should it be appropriately divvied up amongst the constitutionals, the county, and roads, and so on. And what's unfair, I think, to you, to us, is that it's all tied into a vote that requires 5 of us to do something if we reach a threshold and go above that threshold. And a majority, at least from what I'm hearing from the commission, is that a majority of us believe that what you are asking for is, some may not say reasonable, but it is reasonable in terms of what your job is and what you are required to do. And sometimes not even required to do, but have to do because those are the circumstances, and that's what presents itself. That doc video, I'm not so sure that's in someone's job description. But that's what happens when you are on the scene and you have to do what you have to do. But at the end of the day, the legislature has tied our hands in such a way that the mechanics of this get very difficult. What I would much rather have in front of us is that if we are roughly 50-50 of the ad valorem, you're 50%, we're 50%. I would imagine that that portion of the vote, you could get a 5-0 vote from the county commission. The 6 million above that 50-50 allocation, if those were what the numbers were, that's where it gets difficult, because that would require a tax increase. And the legislature should give us the ability not to have to go to a super majority if the sheriff asks of us to go above that number because he or she believes that that's the right number to operate their department. I just think that puts us in a really difficult position because any one of us could argue, as Commissioner Hurd did, stormwater to those who need it and when things go wrong is really important when it fails. But so is the guy on the dock who is, I don't even know if he's hoping that somebody responds to that kind of an issue, but whatever is going through someone's head process at that moment in time, someone has to be there. Whether it's fire rescue or you guys, someone will show up, hopefully, and make that happen. So I just think the fundamentals of how we get to that number for you, because for us to achieve that number for you, there's got to be reductions somewhere else in our budget to make that happen. And that's the rub. I mean, the elephant in the room is that rub. And it shouldn't be a rub. It shouldn't be a rub at all. If our sheriff comes forward and says, or our supervisor election comes forward and says, I need X, I'm like Ed. You're the sheriff, she's the supervisor election. I'm not going to stand in the way of saying, you don't know what you're talking about and why are you asking for that? It's much more for me the mechanics of how we're able to vote and give you what you're asking for. So we will figure it out. I'm supportive of your budget, as always. But I think all of us, it's incumbent upon us to get with the legislature and come up with a better solution relative to a sheriff's budget, which is the lion's share of an ad valorem section of a county's budget. I think you have to separate out that piece of it. The other constitutionals, I think, are perfectly reasonable and in line, and those are dollars we can absorb, generally speaking. How we get to your number and how do we give you what you require to operate a county like we have is a whole nother story, but it takes the legislature to fix that.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I mean, can I?
Of course.
Is that reasonable? Does that sound?
Oh, yeah, I think the whole funding dilemma is a challenge for you all, and that's particularly challenging. I understand the spirit of that law, because I think raising taxes is a big deal, and as a fiscal conservative, I really do come up here, not with hat in hand, but with my hat off, knowing that this is a big deal. This is not a small deal.
But I guess the difference, Sheriff, for me, there's 67 sheriffs in this state that all have the same responsibility and probably operate differently, but have the same responsibility. It would seem to me that the legislature should understand that and understand that that requirement to operate this state gives us the kind of state we have. Without it, you don't get to do all the other things this state gets to enjoy. And I fiscally conservative or not, Republican legislature controlled or not, and governor's house, I just think there has to be for that a different way of getting to the request of what our sheriff wants because of how you even presented your budget in the first place. I'm not coming here asking for something that is over the top crazy, because that would have been the the $118 million ask. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Heatherington?
But when the sheriff is concluded, I thought, Commissioner Smith, you posed the question at the beginning of the meeting to Mr. Donaldson about the mechanics, but it was kind of a big, broad question. So for the people that are listening, maybe you could just briefly do an overview of what the legislature is requiring and how that breakdown happens and what's required of this voting. Yes, once the sheriff is done, yes.
Mr. Donaldson, yeah, so we don't, anything further?
That was it, no?
Sheriff, I think what's also important for our citizens to remember is you're duly elected. The people have decided that they want you to be our sheriff repeatedly. And so, as far as I'm concerned, we're here as the financial mechanism to figure out with our staff how to pay what you are looking for. But if people have an issue with the way you are managing, I always say that the days of, the Wild West sheriff is really over. You are the CEO of a law enforcement organization that is technology and mental health and logistics and from the water to literally land, air, and sea. If the people don't like the budget that you have presented or the way you and your team are doing the job, they have a mechanism to tell you they disagreed with you. So from my perspective, us approving a budget that you came forward with professionals, it's our responsibility, at least in my opinion, to figure out how to get you the money that you need. Commissioner Jenkins.
I appreciate everything that you do, and I agree with all four of the statements that my fellow compadres up here have stated, especially that we have the best sheriff in the state, country. I get to look at it a little bit different perspective and appreciate the position you're in. Being a business owner for 40 years, I agree with Commissioner Hurd's statement that this is not sustainable. It's not sustainable for a small business, a family-owned business with 125 employees. With employee retention, the cost of insurance, we're in the same boat. It at a much smaller scale. And I appreciate what you have to do to make your operation work. And I will always support you, no matter what. And you are the professional, and I know what you're bringing us. You have done, in my heart, I know you have done whatever you can do to make those numbers work as best you can. But something worldwide, from government to the smallest business, has got to change because nothing's sustainable in this right now. And especially, I just wrote a very large check for our insurances for our business, which was knee-buckling. And I don't know how anybody's going to sustain themselves here unless something dramatically changes. So I appreciate the position you are. I support you 100%.
Thank you, Commissioner. If I could just share this thought in response to what you said. The dilemma that we face, unlike any other business, unlike really even the stormwater people, is my recruitment and retention is the very essence of what I do, as it is with your business. But I would imagine that if you were paying your people significantly less than John Smith's landscaping down the block, or I can't remember all your industries, but whatever they are, you would go out of business. And I didn't bring this up, but it's really a segue into part of the dilemma we're under. We are the border county with Palm Beach, which is the highest paid sheriff's office in the state. And people will drive from Port St. Lucie, where they want to work, through my county into Palm Beach to work. This increase has already hit the grapevine, and should you approve it, we are already, we actually, for the first time in, I think, the history of the world, got a request into HR from a Palm Beach County deputy. It would so much rather live here, he just couldn't afford to take the pay cut. So should you fund this budget, we will be on a fantastic trajectory to continue the recruitment winnowing down that we do. You can't hardly get hired here. It's amazing anybody gets to. We have, literally, when people come here and get rejected, they can go to another department and get hired almost without any further work, and we've already rejected them. That's why you see the kind of work you see. That's why you see the efforts that the men and women of the Sheriff's Office expend. So that's the conundrum for us, Commissioner, is that we're not competing with Indian River County, which is substantially less than us. We're competing with Palm Beach County. And I know you hate that. That grates on me to have to say it. It's like if they don't want to work here, go to Palm Beach County. It's not that easy. They won't start here. I can't get the people to come in here. We're not losing them to Palm Beach. They're just not coming here. And that's part of the driver is our overtime. We've had trouble getting our positions filled. This will fix that. And we will have a much more robust force if you all approve this.
Well, I appreciate that. Every time you say something brings up a comment, how important the job is. You know, when you reject a potential applicant for a multitude of reasons, I'm sure, when you were saying that, it makes me think of one, especially in your world, one wrong hire creates a situation on the street that leads to some of the last couple of years' incidents, the rioting and the social and civil unrest. One wrong hire. Most of what we hear that happens in the United States, and thankfully not here, was based on a single person's decision. Whether they were the wrong person or they were a person that was in the wrong set of circumstances, not trained properly. What would that cost be? That's worse than a hurricane. That's worse than anything, that could potentially happen. One catastrophic bad decision could lead to a complete turning our community inside out. So good for you. We could talk the rest of the day about the ups and downs. Mr. Donaldson, what are you looking for from us? Just to accept this? Are we voting as we go here?
We would, in this particular case, yes, we'd like you to approve the sheriff's budget. And then at the end, once they're all accumulated, we can revisit again where we are with the overall budget. And if there's any adjustments need to be, we can do that at the end. But at this point in time, I think the sheriff would be appreciative if he knew leaving here today that his budget has been approved.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Smith.
Mr. Chair, I'll move tentative approval of the sheriff's request.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Smith for tentative approval of the sheriff's budget, seconded by Commissioner Heatherington. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries 4-1 with Commissioner Hurd dissenting. Thank you, sir.
Chairman, thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
to
your
your
time.
team with
Commissioners,
you.
God bless you. Thank you for what you're doing. And I leave here humbled by your support, and I've appreciated your kind words. All of you have been extremely kind. My last comment is this: sheriffs throughout the state fight with their county commissioners on a daily basis. I know some sheriffs that so hate their county administrator, I don't know how they don't come to blows. We have always been at peace. However this works out, you are all my friends. I believe in you and trust you, and thank you so much for what you do.
One more thing, Sheriff. Congratulations upon the naming of the Place of Hope facility. It sounds like it's going to be a wonderful facility.
Thank you. Yes, I plan to spend good time there and try to minister. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good for you, sir. Okay, thank you very much. We'll take a moment. We'll do a couple others. Thank you to your team. Oh, you want to do,
It's up to you. If you wanted to, do you want to wait and do it now, or?
what? Before the rest of the constitutionals?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
Well, I just.
I don't know if they're going to say anything, so let's just give them the opportunity. Clerk of the Circuit Court and Comptroller, Ms. Carolyn Timmon is here. We appreciate you being here. Anything to add, or you're comfortable with it as it is? Thank you. Commissioner Smith?
Mr. Chair, I move tentative approval of the clerk's request.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Smith to tentatively approve the Clerk of the Circuit Court and Comptroller's budget as presented, seconded by Commissioner Heatherington. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Property Appraiser, Ms. Jenny Fields. Jenny Fields, anything to add? She's here. Commissioner Smith.
Chairman, move tentative approval of the property appraiser's request.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Smith to tentatively approve the property appraiser's budget, seconded by Commissioner Jenkins. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Supervisor of Election, Miss Vicki Davis. She is here. Commissioner Smith.
Mr. Chair, I would move tentative approval of the supervisor of elections request.
Second.
Ooh, I'm going to have to go to the tape on that one and see.
Mr. Jenkins.
Photo finish, thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Smith to approve, to tentatively approve the supervisor of elections budget, seconded by Commissioner Jenkins. All those in favor? Aye. The motion carries unanimously. The next is state judicial and state agencies. Anyone here from the state judicial and state agencies? Seeing none, seeing no one, budget fails. Commissioner Smith.
I would move tentative approval.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Smith for tentative approval of the state judicial and state agencies budget, seconded by Commissioner Heatherington. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Our final one is the tax collector, Ms. Ruth Petruszewski. Okay. Commissioner Smith.
Mr. Chair, move tentative approval of the tax collector's request.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Smith to move tentative approval of the tax collector's budget, seconded by Commissioner Heatherington. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Donaldson, why don't we hear sort of the inner workings and the mechanicals of how this budget, how the process is going to work, what needs to happen, and then what we'll do is we'll take our 10:30 closed captioning break, and then start up with the rest of the budget process after that. Mr. Donaldson, welcome back.
Thank you.
Not that you weren't here, but welcome back to the hot seat.
So I just, currently question regarding how it's determined the votes for various funds, and I thought that I would just first put up on the doc cam really quickly that you will be voting on the general fund, which includes all of these items. Then you'll have a separate vote for the fire MSTU, a separate vote for the parks MSTU. Stormwater and roads is a single vote as they're combined together. And then each of the individual districts, commission district funds are also a separate vote. Now, I don't have the awe-inspiring videos that fire rescue or the sheriff has, but this is your administration's attempt at shock and awe, which is to scare you with what looks like a tax form, right? And that's essentially the type of, this is what we have to fill out for each one of those forms to determine how your voting gets involved. And it has, essentially, the formula isn't straightforward. Is ultimately what I'm telling you. I don't expect you to read what's on here, but I think what's important to note is that the state legislature, I think it was in 2011 or 12, somewhere in there, made the changes to as a mandate to determine when a local community could vote for a tax increase, and it's largely based upon how much you spent last year, what your millage, did you do a millage reduction or increase of the previous year, what inflation is currently happening, what the rollback rate is, and what kind of growth you had. And I think it's very important in Martin County to understand that one of the things that makes it challenging for us is the sheriff mentioned Palm Beach County as a competitor, and I would say our two greatest competitors are not just Palm Beach County, but also the city of Port St. Lucie in terms of how it affects our area. So we've seen certainly some growth in our tax base, but it's largely due to values and not due to actual construction. So one of the things the legislature will reward you is if you have growth based upon new construction, you don't have this voting, greatly, this form when filled out, if you put that in terms of actual growth due to new construction, your ability to raise taxes is easier, just to put it plainly. So, Port St. Lucie added, I think, between 20 and 25,000 new residents last year. They approve over 4,000 new building permits a year. Ours is around 400, so they're over 10 times the amount of currently where we're seeing right now. And so their property values, they're able to, I think they're adding over 80 new positions, and 82 in Port St. Lucie, just to give you kind of the scale of what's happening around us. And so when you have that kind of growth, that does pressure on our services and staffing, and I think the recruitment is not just Palm Beach County, but elsewhere. But the point is, ultimately, is that the vote that you're looking at is, it is, any kind of tax increase is significant, but just keep in mind that we are approximately at a millage rate similar to what you had in 2021 and 2022. Martin County has always budgeted what we need as opposed to holding on to what we have. So we've lowered taxes when we didn't need it, like we did last year, and we've unfortunately may have to bump it up some this year. But I think in the end, you'll be, my guess is that we'll be at a millage rate less than what we had in 22 and in 21. So that's, hopefully that answered your question. I'll try to answer some more.
All right, at least elicited new questions. Commissioner Smith.
So I think part of the question was, what is required of the board voting-wise to get to the numbers that are being asked for? So, and how does that breakdown happen? Does it all come down to one single vote that has to be if there were to be an increase, or are those votes broken into multiple votes? And is the sheriff's vote any separation from that vote, or are they all included in one?
So it is broken into several votes, but the general fund is a single vote, which includes the sheriff, most of your county departments, the capital improvement plan, your constitutional officers. So I think in Jennifer's slide, it showed 72% of the 78% of your overall tax structure is in that one vote. So that's really where the meat of your votes are. The fire rescue is a separate MSTU vote that has its application in this form comes up with a separate result. And as we get to those, we can talk about them. But in terms of the overall, and then when you aggregate it, all of them together as your final budget, that was the 4.6% increase that I referenced is where we are right now.
So when I was talking with the sheriff about a thought process of how you get to a number, there's no ability for the board to separate out that 6 million of increase above what would be, if you were to break the budget into 50-50, the county gets 50%, the sheriff gets 50%, and anything above that ask could be a separate unanimous vote. There's no ability to do that. I know Stephanie's shaking her head, and I know the answer to that, but for the public.
Yes, so that's correct. It would be, it would just be a conversation in the end from the actual process. It's just one vote. You all of them, all of the general fund is a single vote, which affects all of those entities I described.
So hopefully, and I don't know where we'll end up, I'm sure we'll get there, but I really do think that we ought to approach the legislature on the sheriff's budget particularly, as I discussed, that it would seem reasonable that if any given sheriff wanted to increase their budget, as Ed said, they're constitutionally elected, as we are constitutionally elected, and they're as responsible to the voters as we are. And so I would never have a problem voting in support of a sheriff's request above what was the anticipated revenue, if that's what was requested. I just don't, and we don't have the mechanism to do that today, but I think that's something we should approach them on to work with, because it would make it, I think, a lot easier on us and the sheriff, that if the sheriff said, I really need 8 million, I don't need 6 million, I cut my budget down by 2 million. Fine. If he or she wants to ask for that number, I'm happy to support it, but then it becomes a separate ask so that everybody understands what that ask is, that's all. But I know we don't have that today, and I appreciate that.
So we can add that to our legislative agenda and talk about that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hurd?
Yeah, I'm just curious. I know that we're required to have a unanimous vote if we want to raise taxes because we didn't have enough new housing growth to satisfy the legislation. So just out of curiosity, do you know how much Palm Beach County, how much of their, how about Port St. Lucie?
We didn't ask, we just, they.
So I think it's over 8%
Wow,
of theirs was new construction.
wow. Ours was 2.
Yeah,
Right.
2.06, yeah.
Wow.
And has been for years.
Yes.
Yeah, I think,
Well, I think most residents realize that the more people individually that are paying into the pot, the less it is for everyone to pay. Now, in Martin County, that's not necessarily, the more people is not necessarily our goal. So it does require, as the expenses continue to increase, like Commissioner Heatherington said in the beginning, property insurance and all the rest of it, everyone in this room, everyone listening, no one's immune to the increases that we've seen across every category. But so has the government, so has this organization. So some of it is decisions that we will get to make, and I think we're going to take out sharp knives on some of the things that we can. But a lot of the things, as Mr. Donaldson and Ms. Manning said in their opening remarks, are either mandatory, unfunded mandates from Tallahassee, or increases that we couldn't just say, we're not going to pay them. The few things that are remaining, we will work on today, that's why we're here. But then from a personnel point of view, we've heard everyone say it. The sheriff has said it, fire rescue says it, but then Mr. Donaldson mentioned that Port St. Lucie, our immediate next-door neighbor to the north, is looking to hire 82 people, I'm assuming across every department. And so where do you think they're going to look first? Right here for our highly trained, highly efficient, effective, professional, knowledgeable employees. So if we just decide to look the other way and just hope for the best, then they'll go. Because, at the end of the day, look, that's a Doug Smith thing. At the end of the day, people have to pay their bills. And if you're offered $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 more to go up the road, even if you love it here, you potentially would do that. And that's also our responsibility, is employee retention and recruitment. So there we are. Anything else let's take our 10:30 closed captioning break. We'll be back in 15 minutes. Thank you. Okay, we are back. We are continuing our July 17th, 2023 budget, BOCC budget workshop meeting. We have this morning gone through the constitutionals and did the initial sort of updates, and now we're going to begin department by department. And I believe these are in alphabetical order. I guess I'm going to keep them in alphabetical order. We will begin with administration. It'll be presented by Mr. George Stokes and Mr. Matt Graham. Gentlemen, you are recognized.
Good afternoon, good morning, Mr. Chair. George Stokes, Assistant County Administrator. With me is Mr. Graham, Assistant County Administrator, who also oversees efforts on the administration front. You'll see I'll kind of go through this and be more than happy to answer any questions or address any comments or concerns. Our fiscal year 23 adopted budget was $13,254,880. You'll see our increase to fiscal year 2024 budget was $821,641 for a net increase of 26.91% increase, which can be a little bit misleading. A couple of things have happened for your consideration. Is one, we are looking for the addition of an FTE in tourism restoration and ecotourism specialist. That's a non-ad valorem funded project, FTE, or full-time equivalent or full-time employee that's paid out of the tourism office. What is an ad valorem request is the full-time employee requested by purchasing, or a purchasing technician to handle the continuing purchasing agreements and contracts that continue to go through our county business, as well as they've seen a larger number of those, and the complexity of those agreements get higher and higher. But really, the majority of the increase is coming from the increase in our inmate medical insurance contract for our Martin County Jail at approximately $1.6 million. Also, just to note that's not listed is we did organizationally transfer our security guards that you see behind us here from the general services budget over to the administration budget, which is a little bit over $100,000. And that is the bulk of the changes that you're seeing in our tentative budget. And with that, Mr. Chair, we're more than happy to answer any questions, comments, or concerns.
Thank you very much. Questions for administration? Mr. Stokes, I think it bears repeating. You mentioned it just briefly, but can you explain when you talk about inmate medical, what that exactly is, and obviously...
Well, I'm going to hand that over to Mr. Graham because I think he can do a much better job.
Perfect. Thank you. Mr. Graham?
So we did have a previous contract. That contract has ended. The previous contractor ended that early, and we had to go out and select a new provider. WellPath, it was an increase of $1.6 million. And basically what happens is anytime somebody is an inmate, we are required by statute to provide health care coverage for those inmates. So this could be anything from, a cold to a serious illness, injury, or disease while in the care of the sheriff's correctional facilities.
Thank you. My question is, why would that line item fall into the administrative budget? It feels like there's several other places that should be. Ms. Manning? Why isn't that in the sheriff's budget?
Okay, so it has always been under the county's budget because we are responsible for it, but we don't actually manage those services. The sheriff manages them. They did not want it in their budget for the past, I'm telling you, probably about 15, 20 years now.
Okay.
They don't want it, and they're as part of their budget because it's, a side up.
Yeah, so the jail is the county's responsibility, but the sheriff runs it for us. And yes, we looked at this in quite a bit of detail. So a little more background is that the provider who had another year contract, due to staffing increases and costs, could not meet their obligation, and they gave the sheriff a notice saying they are no longer going to provide the service. We had to go out and do, the sheriff did a sort of an emergency procurement, if you will, because they kind of walked away and left the bag holding. The other part of this contract is that you have other services that when they have to transport an inmate to the hospital, there's other fees. And with this negotiation, we've capped those fees so that this is the most we would pay. So it's, so in the end, we have a contract that we feel will protect the county without having any other hidden unanticipated costs. And we're going to continue to explore ways that we might be able to reduce inmate medical costs in the future with Indian River County and a few others that are also in the same boat. So I know it's probably a lot more information than you wanted, but this was a significant increase. But I think the sheriffs worked with a provider to do it in a way that caps our maximum out-of-pocket expense, so we shouldn't have any surprises next year. And then the second piece is to moving forward to look at other opportunities or other methods that we might be able to bring those costs down further.
Thank you. One of you, it's a $1.6 million increase. What's the total of that line?
I think it's roughly 5.5 million.
5.664.
Yeah, something, yeah.
So 5.6 million of your grand total 16.8 million. A third of the administrative budget for something that we're not even 100% sure. And I get that why it's being paid. It just, to me, I want our citizens that are watching to be like, why would the administrative budget be 16.8 million? Because nearly 6 million of it is for a specific line item for something else. And I'm assuming it's not just us being nice, it's a state requirement to offer these
That's correct.
medical treatment options for inmates. Thank you. That put a lot of lights on, but Commissioner Hurd, you were...
Yeah, that was my question also, is why here? It seems like it would be more appropriate in the sheriff's budget or in non-departmental.
I mean, we can move it to non-departmental, but because of that funding source, it's under medical services. So we have indigent care in that fund, as well as, other expenses that show up in those budgets. And I think,
And Commissioner, we administer those we are managing those contracts. I think that's another reason why we have lots of contracts that administration takes care of and enforces performance.
I just know that we have to be very careful about where our pools of money are because the legislature watches and imposes restrictions on us and regulations on us all the time. So we need to make sure that we have our line items in the right departments.
and we could look, to see, to move it to non-departmental. It doesn't hurt, but,
Yeah.
yeah.
I guess in my mind, I think of understanding what the administration portion of the budget is. I would potentially see that going to non-departmental, because it obviously makes your budget look gigantic. And I was going to roll a couple heads today, but I guess now I won't have to.
Yes, yes.
Commissioner Heatherington.
I agree, that was my question, but how, in the final year of their contract, I know we had a lot of conversation when this was happening, they just decided they're going to walk away in their final year? There was nothing in their contract that required them to perform, or?
Yeah, there were issues in there that require them to perform. They provided a letter saying that they were leaving, that did not comply with we don't believe it complied fully with the contract requirements for the number of days notice. We had to prepare an event. I believe the company is going into bankruptcy and is unable to perform. So there was a lot of things going on with the provider that was providing, and there's still some ongoing legal matters going on with that.
There was a contractual issue before they said goodbye. There was the previous provider, the one that terminated, had not been paying Cleveland Clinic for and the contract's not with us. So the contract is between the sheriff and the medical provider, but the medical provider was not properly paying Cleveland Clinic, and there was a very large federal lawsuit. We were, of course, not involved in it, nor was the sheriff, and they lost. And so that's what Mr. Donaldson is alluding to. They then came back, the provider, trying to back bill. It's very complicated. We have the contract with the sheriff covers medical coverage for the prisoners up to a certain amount, and then once it exceeds a certain amount, then we use our stopgap insurance to cover it. And I pushed my button to kind of explain that that's one of the reasons that it's handled in budget because it's a little more complicated than just paying it. And the sheriff in this county runs our jail for us. I think in St. Lucie County, the county runs the jail. I don't think the sheriff does. So it's kind of a anomaly based on our way of running the jail and having that done. It could certainly be moved into another account. I'm
Yeah,
just
it's not a
explaining that there's insurance that has to be filed for, and so it's a fairly complicated, convoluted process to get everything paid for. But
Sounds
Mr.
like-
Donaldson's right, the original medical provider did breach their contract.
And there's no way to recover any of that, it sounds like.
That's up to the sheriff.
I think there's some pursuit of that, but I think given where that company is, I think it's more, the better statement is the likelihood of us recovering the funds are very low. I think the county and the sheriff's department worked really well together in navigating this ultimate minefield. When there was a month or so that there was a great concern we would be without any medical service at all, but we came
Many
through
other
it.
Americans.
Yep. So.
I'm just looking at the list to see where we could put it. Maybe library? Public Works would take a $6 million bump.
Non-department, that was great.
Okay, Commissioner Smith.
When someone becomes an inmate, do they lose their insurance and do they lose their ability to recover those costs?
So when they become, you're going into part of what's one of the issues, that's the statewide issue, is
I asked
that
that
if you were, let's say you were a Medicaid recipient, and became a jailed one, then you now become, even though you might have been able to get health care under Medicaid or whatever else, as soon as you come into the jail, you're now the responsibility of the county, and we're responsible providing you health insurance. We're unable to get any of the federal aid. So that's why it's so expensive, and that's why other communities and our Treasure Coast communities are also in the same boat, would like to see if there's a way we could, because if we could at least get to Medicaid based upon obviously, they're indigent now, most of them, it would help us out greatly.
So I think this issue, and the reason I asked that question was because of the answer. This came up years ago with the large urban counties, that you can imagine if our bill is $5 million, you can imagine what Miami-Dade is. And not to be able to recover those costs or not to be able to bill the inmates for those costs is astronomical. And so I don't know where that all ended up, but it is certainly something we ought to add on our list again to re-engage with if it's at the federal level or at the state level, that how do we get that fixed? And it affects all of us, but it's a large number, and you can only imagine what it's like in St. Lucie County or Miami-Dade or wherever. So we should add that to our legislative list.
And absolutely, and I've had some preliminary conversations with some of our lobbyists on this very subject, and we'll make it a formal addition to our list.
I guess you'd have to balance out what they're in for versus what they have. Any other questions? I entertain a motion.
Move tentative approval.
Second.
There you go. I was going to say fast for lack of a second. Our own department. Motion was made by Commissioner Smith to move tentative approval of the administration budget, seconded by Commissioner Hurd. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Our next department is Airport. It'll be presented by Mr. Andrew McBean. Please sit in the hot seat. I mean the staff seat.
Good morning, Commissioners. Andrew McBean, Interim Airport Manager for the Martin County Airport, presenting the fiscal year '24 tentative budget. Fiscal year '23 adopted budget was $1.808 million, and the fiscal year '24 tentative budget is $1.90 million. This is a 5.12% change in the budget. The primary cause of this change was increases in the budget due to the cost of doing business. To the right here, we have a couple of departmental goals. Those goals include completing the rehabilitation of our primary taxiway Alpha at the airport, as well as the continuation of a sound program at the airport for eligible homes in the surrounding community. Commissioners, are there any questions on the budget as presented?
Move approval.
Second.
Ooh, you got a triple second. We have a motion by Commissioner Hurd for a tentative approval of the airport budget as presented, seconded by everybody else, but let's say Commissioner Smith. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you very much. Our next department is building. It'll be presented by Mr. Jeff Doherty. Mr. Doherty, good morning. You are recognized.
Good morning, everyone. This is a presentation of the budget for the building department. As most people know, the building department is predominantly user-funded, not ad valorem funded. We have a slight adjustment, basically the results of the collective bargaining agreement, salary adjustments and residual multipliers of Social Security, Medicare, FRS. We have one $25,000 adjustment for the increase in the cost of replacement vehicles. And outside of that, everything remains the same. Moving forward to next year, a couple issues that we're going to concentrate on is the new building code goes into effect the beginning of January. And I think on a larger one would be the milestone inspections for the condominiums out on the oceans. So we're going to do a lot of community outreach with those associations. And if there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Doherty?
I move approval.
Second.
May I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
Are the new code requirements Ian related?
Pardon?
Are the new code requirements Ian related?
No. Every 3 years, the building code is changed, and it's scheduled to go into effect the first of the year, and that's on its 3-year cycle.
And the increased inspections out on the island are based on the collapse of that condominium tower down south, correct?
Yes, that's correct, and it has two effects. One is the structural inspection, and it also requires a look at the reserves if there's funding to move forward as years come on. This is the first year, so we're going to have almost all our condominiums in this category. We believe there's about 120 of them, and from then on, they will be every 10 years after.
Thank you. Any other questions for building? Seeing none, we have a motion. What? No.
Did we already have one? Oh, we did. I'm sorry.
Oh, Commissioner Hurd.
So does the building department have to determine if they have the reserve, if the independent homeowner associations have reserves?
No, this would just be for the condominium association. They're required to hire a structural engineer or architect that are capable of evaluating that, and as part of the evaluation, do they have the funding set up to do whatever repairs could come up in 3 years, 5 years, 7, whatever the evaluation of the physical building takes place.
And who makes the evaluation of whether or not they have adequate reserves?
That has to be part of the study as outlined in the statute. Now, whether the architect engineer partner with an accounting or that type of firm, that's up to those. There's a form they have to fill out and submit in.
Okay, thanks.
We have a motion by Commissioner Hetherington for a tentative approval of the building's budget, seconded by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Our next department is Office of Community Development. It'll be presented by Ms. Susan Corris and Mr. George Stokas. Ms. Corris, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Commissioner. Susan Corris, Office of Community Development. Our fiscal year '23 adopted budget was $567,000 and change. Our tentative fiscal year '24 budget is $687,749. That's a 21.28% increase, and I will follow in the footsteps of those who came before this morning and say that much of that is because of increases in insurance, salary, FRS, and inflation. The bit that is not would be the addition of one program coordinator to oversee our art and public places program, our historic preservation program, both of which are countywide programs. And the 2/3 of that funding would come from general fund, 1/3 would come from increment funding, and that is because they would also be asked to do all of the marketing and communication efforts for our 6 redevelopment areas. We tie that directly into our fiscal year '24 goals. We will complete infrastructure for the installation of the Rio CRA, and that's a milestone for us. That'll be half our CRAs. We'll have complete sewer and water. And also that we would look to develop marketing strategies to move our CRAs forward as we continue in our redevelopment journey, and we are doing the work that our mission tells us to do, which is streetscapes and infrastructure and the redevelopment of public spaces. It's important that the community, especially our future businesses and residents, understand and know what our CRAs can offer them. And that's a direct tie-in to our FTE ask. That is my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Heatherington.
So if you, the one FTE, you said it was funded, would be funded 2/3 from the general fund?
Correct.
And then the remainder from the community redevelopment. Who's doing that? The historic preservation, I'm sure someone's doing this. Does that lie within your department?
It does.
Who's doing this now?
So the Office of Community Development, basically, Commissioner, does 3 things. One is oversee the Community Redevelopment Agency and all of that operation. And the 2 other things that we are tasked to do here is the Art and Public Places program, so we manage that and oversee that, and the Historic Preservation Board as well. That all runs out of our office.
Commissioner Smith.
I'm sure there's a good answer. Why only a third?
Because that position would be working for CRA for 1/3 of the time, and that would be increment funding would support that. Increment funding doesn't support anything other than CRA operations.
So, for instance, historic preservation, if it were the house or refuge, it's outside of the CRA boundary, wouldn't be able to be billed for.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Move tentative approval. Sorry.
Second.
No, you had your light, so you get to go first.
Okay. Move tentative approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion, tentative approval of the Office of Community Development's budget by Commissioner Jenkins, seconded by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Hurd.
What happened to the capital improvement plan and the commission MSTU?
Ms. Murley.
I thought we were going alphabetically.
We have already reviewed the tentative CIP and the CIP workshop, but we can stop at Commission MSTU if you'd like.
Well, I don't see it on the list, so were we not going to cover commission MSTU?
No, we are.
Yeah. I was going to do that at the wrap-up.
Okay.
When we're talking millages.
Just wanted to know what was happening with these.
Or we can, yeah.
I would suggest both of those would be at the end, the MSTUs, and then the CIP would be the final.
Okay.
Now we know. Our next department is County Attorney. It'll be presented by our County Attorney, Sarah Woods.
Good morning, Sarah Woods, County Attorney. We are a lean, mean staff of 6, 5 attorneys, 1 legal administrator. If you'll notice, last year my budget was $1,515,000. This year $1,652,000. My operational budget has remained exactly the same with no increase. All of the budget increases are due to salary, FRS, medical, fringes, and that connotes to a 9 0.05% change, about $140,000 in change. We will continue to provide high-quality legal services to the board that comprehensively review and address legal issues raised in a timely manner, and we will continue to expand our full-service legal support to all county departments and advisory boards. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Heatherington has one.
It says, you said you're a lean, mean machine, which I agree, of 6. It says that 8 full-time employees in the budget book. So are we short 2 employees right now?
I'm fully staffed what I feel we need to be staffed. We have 5 attorneys and the other positions we have not filled because we haven't had the need for them, but we've left it in. But I haven't filled them because I didn't feel that we needed it at this time.
Good for you. Okay,
Second.
thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Jenkins to move tentative approval of the county attorney's budget, seconded by Commissioner Heatherington. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Someone dial 911. Our next department is Fire Rescue. It'll be presented by our fire chief and his team.
Morning, Commissioners. For the record, Chad Chancholi, Martin County Fire Rescue Fire Chief, and this is...
Matt Rush, Fire Rescue Administrator.
So as you can see, our FY24 tentative budget is roughly just under $59 million. Our change is roughly 13.42. The lion's share of that really comes from the additional 20 full-time employees that we onboarded towards the end of this fiscal year. And in fact, they just graduated the class last Friday, so they're on the street now, today. And we have an additional 3 full-time fire inspectors that we're looking to onboard. So those would be additional 3 full-time employees, but this is going to be a revenue neutral, funded just based off the funds that we collect doing the inspections in the county. And this is something just to keep all the businesses in compliance the way they need to and just be more efficient with these inspections and make sure that we're doing it on an annual basis. But again, this will be funded from the funds that we collected from them, those 3 additional. And other than that, it's just the typical of the inflationary costs, medical supplies, fuel costs, and everything else. But like I said, again, the lion's share is really your 20 full-time additional employees that we onboarded. With that, if you have any additional questions.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Heatherington.
So the 3 fire inspectors, they're obviously doing new construction, but there's an annual assessment on all businesses. I don't mean assessment as in fees, but you're inspecting businesses annually,
Our life safety inspections that we do on an annual basis.
and they pay an annual service fee?
Yeah, so I'm going to invite up our Deputy Fire Chief, Rodney Robertson, and this is kind of like his wheelhouse, so I'll let him articulate a little bit.
Morning. Rodney Robertson, Deputy Fire Chief. So Florida statute says that the fire department has a duty to perform regular safety fire inspections. And right now, with our 5,000 businesses, we are only able, with our 2 inspectors currently, we're only able to get out there and do about 40% of them annually. So that translates to us only seeing a business every 2 to 2.5 years. By onboarding these additional inspectors, this will allow us to do all the businesses annually, which will make sure that they all remain within fire code, and then also will help us generate because we were only charging if we went out there to them. By us going out and getting all 5,000 businesses, we will be able to generate that revenue to be able to pay for that.
So it's charged per service. They're not paying in their business taxes. I think you might have answered my questions. If we hadn't been going to them, how are we going to pay for the expanded services that you're going to be billing because you are going to be going to these businesses?
So we're looking to, right now we're working with legal and we're trying to make it to where it's going to be very similar to the business tax receipt. So in order for a business to every year they do that, they also have to have a fire inspection. So we're going to bill them at the beginning of the fiscal year. They will pay at the beginning, and then we will go out through that year and, we divide it up accordingly and schedule them so that they can have those inspections done.
Is the cost based on the size of the business or
Based on
square footage?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for our chief?
Move tentative approval.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Smith to move tentative approval of the fire rescue budget, seconded by Commissioner Heatherington. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries 4-1 with Commissioner Hurd dissenting. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Our next department is General Services, and it'll be presented by Mr. Sean Donahue.
Good morning, Sean Donahue, General Services Director.
Welcome.
We were asking for a 3.72% increase, largely due to operational expenses, increases in electric costs, fuel, and gas and diesel costs are going up. We're also asking for a 1 FTE for an energy manager position. This would be to study the county's facilities, looking for energy savings. I think largely that facility could be paid for by future energy savings just by finding them and looking and keeping maintaining the systems. Our future projects would be doing more energy savings contracts, as well as doing the energy management position, and then providing future electric vehicles and electric vehicle charging stations across the county. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Smith.
Mr. Chair, Sean, is that the work that we've been doing through the years with Train? Are they the ones doing that evaluation on energy savings? And
Rain has done several of them. This would be a new advertisement if we go out again. We could pick through Train, we could pick FPL. There's a multitude of companies that can do this work.
Okay. And are we doing that across the board, or are we just selecting specific sort of targeted areas?
This study, actually, we would start out looking at the entire county as a whole. The last time we've done, say, lighting improvements was when LEDs weren't really around. They weren't that popular. They weren't that energy efficient economically. So now we can go back through and we can look for other ways to save energy. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit in this county.
So that brings up a really good point. So when we did the Musco contract with Train, 10, 12 years ago at least, I guess, that was to have effectively paid for itself in savings, and I think like 2 or 3 years it paid back the cost of doing it. They maintained all of the changing of the fixtures and upgrading. So are they going to be again looking at converting all of what we did with the athletic fields to LED? Is that the direction we're going?
No, we wouldn't tap in unless it made economical sense. We wouldn't tap into old projects. We would look for other things that are happening. And there's a lot, like I said, there's water, there's sewer, there's building envelope changes to make the buildings more efficient, as well as some HVAC and some other electrical changes that we can save.
And the other thing I never understood at the time, and it just didn't make sense with the amount of money we were saving, it would be probably worth reaching out to the new superintendent of schools, because they didn't do their athletic fields when we did ours. And it just never, it seemed kind of crazy that with what we were projecting in savings, that they wouldn't have wanted to do them at the same time. And, they've got their own mission and they've got their own ideas, but there's a new superintendent that seems to be really interested in doing aggressive ideas. And so it might be worth at least, not that they're going to tag on, but maybe there's a way for them to be in that conversation at the same time.
Certainly possible.
Because there's a lot of crossover between those fields and lighting and what we do.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hurd.
Yeah, I've noticed throughout our budget that there are big discrepancies in standby pay and overtime, and yours is by far the lowest, and I assume that you have a lot of overtime and a lot of standby. So why are those costs so much lower than the other departments?
We build into the budget with standby pay. We're not asking for new positions, so they wouldn't go up.
Complimenting you.
I appreciate it.
That's what that looks like.
Everyone needs to look at your standby pay and your overtime pay and use that as a model.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That was rare, Sean. A rare moment.
Double rainbow. Commissioner Heatherington.
I'm trying to understand the FTE, and I thought I was kind of familiar with the Train, but that's been a while. So it's to analyze the energy. This position is to analyze and assess where we could be finding savings. Is that right?
Correct.
So are they going to be analyzing forever? Wouldn't that make sense? You could have someone study. I assume that you must have some kind of idea that there's going to be a return on investment by this person. So someone's at least analyzed it initially to warrant it being a FTE, right?
Based on my experience, I've worked in other large, corporations and agencies, and what I've seen with just some preliminary consultation with some experts, the county does have some opportunity to save significant dollars, additional to where we've been before. There's two things that this person would do. They would look at and maintain the older ESCO contracts, make sure we're still on task, and then look at new potential opportunities for savings. And that can be as little as calibrating that thermostat that's on the wall, or making sure that equipment is turning on and off at the right time and adjusting schedules for time of day. And then everything in between. So there's potential savings out there. I can come back with studies. I think this position should be paid for by future energy savings, but we've got to tap into that first and realize it.
So it couldn't be done with a consultant to at least analyze that. It would be my preference than putting in a full-time employee. Because there's so many costs associated with that.
It's also a different way to go. The consultant wouldn't be as readily available, for the time that I think we could spend looking for savings. We'd be paying by the hour. But this person could go out in the middle of the night and looking for lights that aren't turning off on the schedule and things like that. So there's some adjustments we could make to go consulting route, but I think we'd lose a little bit in that world.
Mr. Donaldson.
I was just going to say, one of the things that Mr. Donahue also identified was that ensuring that the contracts that you did issue were actually being complied with was an area we were lacking on, and we were able to put together a lot of details, and Train's done a good job for us, and we were able to verify that they were saving us the money, but there hadn't actually been a detailed analysis through that was done, and there were some. And it also doesn't mean that when they initially stalled it, that we were operating it in accordance with the way that it would actually save you the money, the way it was intended. So you need somebody to not only maintain those larger contracts, and I think Mr. Donahue's also pointed out that the ability to find other areas that may not be as lucrative for a big train contract that are on the smaller scale, that we can do a lot of savings on working on some of these smaller issues. And that with that, combined with looking at some of these larger contracts, which I think we have not looked at recently, which I think there are a lot of opportunities to do some larger contracts to save us money. Both of those will keep this person busy for several years.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith.
I think to Commissioner Heatherington's point, though, I think, and I forget exactly how Train came about and where we started with all of that. I don't know if it was us going to them and saying, hey, we think we can do this better than we're doing it, or did they come to us? Because they did the courthouse, I think, right? They were involved in the...
They've done improvements at a lot.
The re-energy side of the courthouse. I think they did the jail water consumption process for us. And then we did the Musco lighting. I think we did that. But again, I don't know what was the impetus. Was it our staff going to them saying, hey, we think we can do this better? Or was it them coming to us and saying, hey, we know how to do this? Because they were really the financing mechanism. They weren't so much the... They weren't so much the.
They do both. So I think to answer your question, Commissioner, it was a little bit of both. We had some large capital needs, and the state came out with I think these were programs to encourage you, and it was something that was more leading edge when we first started this, and that energy savings could pay for your capital expense. So if you had a $500,000 or $1 million worth of HVAC that you needed put in, instead of just putting the standard pieces in, you not only put in a more efficient units, but also all of the electronics that control it with smart thermostats, that the provider could then demonstrate that they could loan you, they could build the equipment for you, charge you a monthly fee that would be cheaper than if we just built it ourselves and paid the electricity over that time. So it does two things for the community. One is it allows us to pay for it over time, And also that monthly or annual payment that we're paying for can demonstrate that it would be significantly less than if we just simply bought it and used it the traditional way. So,
The statute requires the project to be budget neutral in the sense that you're paying for it with future energy savings. We don't have that opportunity if we did it in-house.
We had this presentation probably 6, 8 months ago where Trane came back in and shared with us what they had done over all these years. When we get to the point of you actually moving forward with it, I think it would be helpful just as a refresher to see what that looked like and how much savings there were really involved to give us a better perspective. It just take that same presentation, bring it back to us and say, here's where we are. But then also maybe a tighter outline of where do you really want to go with this thing. I think it's all great. It'd be helpful to understand.
Will do.
Thank you. You want tentative approval?
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
I heard you. Thank you. We have a tentative approval.
Second.
Thank you.
Just want to make one comment. I really just don't think I'm on board with I mean, I support everything else in your budget. I just would rather see it done where you present something that we can analyze to see some of the savings. Just, I'm not embracing to have another full-time employee. And, you know, no offense to but the department's budget otherwise, I'm totally supportive of, but just not this FTE.
Commissioner Jenkins.
I'm kind of leaning the same way. I understand the whole, somebody to review all of those contracts that we're talking about. But at the same time, every facility that we have has a person responsible for it, right? So this building has one of your employees that is responsible for this building. Why isn't that person trained to do what you're asking to do for this specific building? I mean, so I'm not into building bureaucracies here, right? So we have staff that are responsible for whether it's a ball field or whether it's why isn't it, instead of adding a employee to do that countywide, why isn't there a training program in place to train the people that are actually responsible for these facilities to do exactly what you're asking?
There are certifications required. Certified Energy Manager, CEM, is one of them that we'd look for in this employee. The second thing is if you're not diving into the Trane, which is what we have predominantly, energy software, if you're not in that day-to-day, it's use it and forget it. You know, so each employee is not going to dive into this particular building or any building in the college or in the campus, county. Sorry, slip. On a daily basis. This position would, and they'd be constantly looking for energy savings, looking for things that are out of whack. So there's a little bit of a slip there that you won't get if we go in-house with it. I can certainly get a consultant to do this, absolutely. If that's the wish of the board, I'll come back with a consultant proposal and we can move forward with that.
Commissioner Smith.
So I have a thought, and I'm going back and forth with, I think it's a good idea, and that's why I kind of asked the idea about Trane, because I know what they did for us, and I know the capabilities that they have. I think it would be helpful, Mr. Donaldson, is maybe to get an agenda item before we finalize the budget, not today, but in the future. I'm okay with leaving it in right now, but I think if we did a presentation as to really what was involved and what the scope of all this is, the detail of it all, I think that would be helpful to understand. Is it someone who specializes in just X, or is it literally going out to the industry, whoever it may be, and saying, look, we have this enormous envelope, we have 75 buildings that we manage, come and make us a proposal or bid on a proposal that includes all the above. I don't know if they do that or not, or if they just say, we deal in the energy side of this for AC, or we deal in the energy side of this for lighting. I'm guessing maybe they do both, but that might be helpful for those that are on the fence about, or not even on the fence, just saying, I'm not supporting adding a person. I think it could use a little bit more conversation, a little bit more material to show this is what we can do with this, or this is how we could do it this way. That's my thought.
I agree with that.
Commissioner Hurd.
Yeah, Ms. Murley, can you ballpark what our electrical usage is per year countywide?
I could if I had my numbers in front of me. It has gone up 12% in this last year.
Is it 12 million? Is it 15 million? Is it,
I'd have to go
I can
look.
come back to you with.
at any rate, it's a huge number.
Yes.
I can't believe it's taken us this long to hire an energy resources manager. I think at the time, it's high time that we hire someone to manage our resources because they're a huge part of our budget. You can hire two as far as I'm concerned.
Well, isn't this interesting? We have 2 for, 2 against, on something that you would have thought was relatively benign. That's what makes it exciting for the people that are going to come after you at the other departments. I could make an argument for or against. I was here when we did the train and the larger and the Musco lighting contracts. I thought they were home runs. They were basically managed completely, and I thought the important point that you made, Mr. Donahue, is they not only did the initial review and inspection of those processes, they also managed them. And to me, that's the tipping point. Your explanation of why that person would be important. I thought Commissioner Hetherington's point that you could bring a person in on a finite time frame to review everything, and once it's all been reviewed, it was reviewed. The thing that changed for me is what you said, that that person would then, has 3 jobs. The first job is to go around and be like, you know, your dad and figure out, shut that light off and the temperature's too high, like go around like people do and figure out where they could find energy efficiencies. The second was to continue to manage and review and oversee our existing and future contracts to do that. Like, we assume that Trane is doing an excellent job, and I believe that they are. Same with Musco, but we don't have anybody, like, we have contract, where are they, in your department, Ms. Woods? People that review contracts to make sure they're all being up to, Mr. Donaldson? Who does that?
So when a contract like that gets issued, the.
No, I'm not speaking of this particular department.
Performance measures?
Performance measures on other contracts. Remember several years ago,
So
we
it's,
put someone in place?
it relies upon each department who the contract was under to be responsible for ensuring that it meets the requirements. So if it was a public works contract or general services, it's ultimately, it would be the department's responsibility to determine whether or not they're complying with the contract.
Okay, so that was the second portion of that job. And then the third and most important portion, and, you know, the interesting part that there's 5 of us here is that then Commissioner Jenkins says, well, the people that are responsible for maintaining this building, can't they just do that? And then if there's certification and things like that, and if they can go around and then check every thermostat and check, you know, other, you know, pumps and I could see going either way. It's not a great year to be adding FTEs, but I believe your calculations that the person could basically pay for it themselves with the savings, especially in the initial years. I would lean in favor of having you add that position simply for the fact that it has an ability to pay for itself, the position. Who's staffed? Ms. Murley?
I have your answer. 7.5 million just between electricity and streetlights, and that doesn't include any utility or other HVAC cost.
Big number.
7.5 million.
7.5 million.
Mr. Donahue, would that person also be responsible for looking at street lamps and everything, or just in the buildings?
Probably just in the buildings, because streetlights are on and off, you know, there's no real savings. They have to do what they have to do. I'm looking for other things that happen, you know, in the middle of the night when the building's supposed to be set back.
Yeah.
Temperatures are supposed to rise, so we're saving money. Is that happening? Those are what I'm looking for.
Well, maybe this is a question for Mr. Donaldson then. If that person is a trained expert in finding efficiencies within the General Services Department, can that be a interdepartmental position where if Parks and Rec, we've all gotten calls from constituents that you drive by a park at 2 o'clock in the morning and the lights are all on? Could that person have the ability to review other areas for efficiencies?
Well-
Street lamps, you know, I get that the street lamps turn on and off, but sometimes if there's something got hit and the light is, you know, some of them don't go on and off. Some, you know, some bridge lamps are on all day and some don't come on at all.
If we had an expert in the county that had, certainly our goal is to share that throughout the county. And if it was, you know, color temperatures were better or whatever you could do to make it both the service that's being provided being better and the cost to deliver that service less, absolutely, they could use that expertise. The individual would be housed in general services, but when Parks was consulting on a new lighting project, if we had somebody who was more state-of-the-art and what that was going, we would certainly rely on them for that.
Well, Ms. Woods has 5 other attorneys in her department, and they do all of the departments and all of our advisory boards within a small group of experts in the field. If you're looking to hire an expert in the field, I would be much more comfortable if that expert in the field collaborated with all of our other departments. And that would be a tipping point for me. So with that, we'll give Commissioner Smith the final word.
Is there a motion?
Not yet. Oh, let's freshen it up.
I thought I did make it.
Are you the one? Okay. Oh, that's right, Commissioner Hurd, yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yes. Old school, new school. We have a motion by Commissioner Smith for tentative approval of the general services budget as presented, seconded by Commissioner Hurd.
Added.
I assume that means within the commentary that you'll come back with an agenda item at some point before we finalize our budget and have a more robust conversation about it all.
That's as I understand it, yes.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
And 2 coughs.
Yes?
I said yes.
Oh, I didn't hear it. It was muffled.
It was
In between the 2 coughs.
I thought it was I'll save it for later. The motion passes 4-1 with Commissioner Heatherington dissenting. Thank you very much. Our next department is Growth Management. It'll be presented by our Growth Management Director, Mr. Paul Schilling. Mr. Schilling, welcome. You are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Paul Schilling, Growth Management Director. So for some insight in this budget item, the adopted budget is, as you see here, and then the considerations are, there's a proposed 5.78% increase due to the variety of increases in fuel and other services and supplies based on external factors. As you all know, we are embarking on the evaluation and appraisal report, so we're working on that diligently. We've enlisted the services of outside consultants to help us with that. And we target workshops at the end of August and then in January. The considerations for the goals are to complete that process and also maintain the very, very high level of customer service that we all provide on a daily basis. And then it continue to implement the land development regulations in the Martin County Growth Management Comp Plan and maintain Martin County's high quality of living. So just some considerations, with respect to the evaluation or appraisal report, those are ongoing services. We're not enlisting additional staff. I have a wonderful staff. I'd like to take the opportunity to praise them. They work very, very hard in a very, very difficult business on a day-to-day basis. Some of the things we're struggling with potentially are, as one of the commissioners mentioned, just the market, the public market, the private market, and other staffing considerations with respect to. So I love my team that I have. I think they work day in and day out very, very hard. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith.
Thanks, Paul. And I think your staff does a great job. I had this thought the other day, and I'll just take the opportunity that you're sitting here. This has really nothing to do with budget, but you're sitting there. A couple people have said to me recently, or through others and whatnot, they don't understand why the county, and I think we had some public speakers last week talk about the apartment complex out in Palm City that's being built. And allegedly, whatever it is. And the sense you get kind of from that commentary, and most people shouldn't have to understand how you do what you do. But people don't understand, I don't think, generally speaking. And so one of the things I was thinking that maybe what we ought to start doing, maybe quarterly or on some timeline, is do some like growth management 101. Like actually have an agenda item that kind of lays out what happens. Why does someone get a development application? How do they get a development application? What is land use? What is zoning? Why is there zoning? Why is there land use? How did they even get land use to begin with? When you go through a presentation with an applicant, there's an explanation, sort of, usually about it has to be this, this, and this, and there's a list of criteria that one goes through to make sure that it's all lined up. We do that all day long, but the public comes in on a given project and doesn't understand that and says, well, just say no, like, we don't want you to. And so I just listening to that commentary last week, it just seemed like we do it at the Regional Planning Council. Every year when we have newly electeds, or every other year when we have newly electeds, we do a sort of a 101 series that Dana has been doing for years, just to kind of get everybody on the board up to speed as to what they do. I was thinking maybe you ought to be doing that too, or as a thought. You don't have to, but I think it would be helpful. And do it regularly, like do it on an ongoing basis, because constantly people are moving in, and we even had some folks show up that said, I'm wanting to move to Martin County, but I don't like what you're doing, right? And so.
Then don't come.
Huh?
Don't come then.
Well,
one less person.
But I think if on a regular basis, and I'm sure we do that in CARES, I'm sure there's a component that you could probably pull from CARES to do, but I think we ought to do that on a more regular basis.
Yes, sir. A couple things. One would be and I'll use that as an example, the complex that you mentioned that hasn't even successfully achieved compliance, notwithstanding any scheduling of any board meetings. But the introduction of, and I'll be happy to look at that. Would I'd probably prefer to do something along the lines of maybe YouTube videos or something to that, with that, just because of the fact, and I get out in the community, I talk to the realtors, I talk to the builders. We do that next door here many, many times a day to people that are looking for answers. But I would be hesitant because of the heightened public interest in certain projects to somehow introduce that element into what was going to be a very, very benign fundamental discussion on our process.
But I think you could apply it to any part of the process. I just don't think people understand at all the rights that people have with property. And I think it's very easy to take that description and use it however you wish. I don't think it has to apply to any given piece of property. It's the process. That what is our process, and how did we even get land use? Why does Florida have land use? Prior to 1968, we didn't have zoning, right? And 84, we had land use, I think, right? Was when land use came in.
Comprehensive planning.
The comprehensive growth management.
So, and you can't do it for every single commission meeting. I appreciate that. But I just think the educational side of that would be incredibly helpful. I get people ask me, like, I was told the other day by some very close friends, don't approve any more development.
I get that.
Okay, what does that really mean? Like, you can't just say, we're not going to do any more. Anyway,
No, you cannot.
but I don't think people understand that at all. I know they don't.
I'd be happy to.
Explore that further. Thank you.
Commissioner Jenkins.
And you don't even have to reinvent the wheel, because if you remember, Nikki, probably 4 years ago, did a video that knocked it out of the park. Now, that said, that video, some of the information in that video, we've been preempted in a lot of other things that it needs to be updated. But this is interesting, we're having this conversation, because this is a conversation I just had with y'all. And it was spurred by me sitting through a NAC meeting where our NAC board members didn't even understand the basic premise of property rights. And that is a absolute must. Not going to vote to approve a gas station because they don't want a gas station is something they can't do, right? And by the way, it's completely out of their purview for the use part of that anyway. So I think a lot of this, you should start with our NAC boards, right? They're the ones that, they're part of the county, and if they don't get it, how do you expect the public to get it? But, yeah, if you can review Nikki's thing, because she did an astounding job back in the day, or, 4 years ago. Yeah.
That's still on our development review page, I think.
And you bring up a really good point, because we've been preempted on the amount of gas pumps, right? We can't any longer say how many pumps a station can have, as an example, right?
Well,
We have Senate Bill 102 that now everybody is trying to grapple with and understand what that looks like, and there will be changes, I'm sure, as time moves forward. And so I think it just would be helpful for people to better understand.
I'd be more than happy to educate and take that on.
I've had Mr. Schilling to an event in Palm City where we had probably 60, 70 people come, and he made a presentation and then did Q&A, and he did an excellent job, so we can continue to do that. Weekends, nighttime. Commissioner Hurd.
Just need a little.
Holidays, It's a great opportunity for your wife and you to spend some quality time together in Palm City. Commissioner Hurd?
Yeah, so you're talking about doing these in the NACs. Not everybody goes to the NAC meetings, whereas there is a pretty large audience for MCTV, and I absolutely concur that our residents need more education on growth management policies and development review. And I myself love going to the internal development review meetings to see what projects are. I get the notices every week about what projects are going to be reviewed. And if people need to understand what minor developments are, what major developments are, which go to the board, which do not go to the board, and understand somewhat about compliance and how, if a project complies with all of our requirements, then we don't have any ability to say no. And I don't think people understand that. So I think that it's a great idea to have some real-time development review as part of our agendas. Not every month, not every meeting, maybe quarterly. I know that with our joint meetings that we bring up the projects that are under review. And just to expand upon that just a little bit would really be helpful, so that the taxpayers, our residents, understand the limitations of growth management and development review.
And I do agree that the CARES presentation that I conduct with the help of the environmental staff is very, 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 very educational. I know it's a limited number of seats, so to speak, but I agree with you. A lot of people are astounded that that a decision-making body cannot just deny an application or a building permit for that, in the same logs. So, thank you.
Commissioner Heatherington.
I agree with all those comments. The more education of the public, the better. And with that, I will move tentative approval of your budget.
He's like, thank goodness. Through this.
I have all this stuff.
Did you say a second? Thank you. I would agree with what we heard. I think even if it was not so much an actual project, which could have problems turning it into a big conversation for an applicant, but it could be a hypothetical 3-story building, whatever. And then I know that meeting that Commissioner Hurd is talking about is, I know, officially not meant to have senior level members of the organization at it. But it is, of course, your prerogative. I was going to attend the last one, and then as I was opening the door, I saw Commissioner Hurd there, which then, of course, means that she and I shouldn't be sitting in the same meeting, even though you're not participating, you're just observing, correct?
Yes.
So I could potentially do that, but I'm trying to cut you. You saw me in the window at the meeting last week?
Yes, sir, I did, and.
Oh, no, here's another one.
Yes.
Have like a pre-planning, just to talk about the projects that are in the pipeline. Some people also don't comprehend the fact that we don't hear about every single thing. Some of them, things that are handled at a staff level or might elevate to an administrative level, don't come to the commissioners.
Yes, sir. May I just point out one thing for the
Like
record?
to.
That internal development review staff meeting is internal staff. It's not open to the general public as the joint workshops are. Of course, with the applicant, those are on Thursday mornings, agenda items, and those public participation, although infrequent, does happen from time to time, but it's not a public.
Yeah, yours is an internal workshop meeting.
Yes, sir.
With your staff.
Yes, sir.
I hear you. We have a motion by Commissioner Heatherington to accept growth management's, to tentatively approve growth management's budget. It was seconded by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Information Technology and Technology Investment Plan. It'll be presented by Mr. Michael Merker.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
To ask your,
This will be the last one before lunch. And also by Miss Erica Sinclair. Welcome. The two of you are recognized.
Good morning. Good morning, Commissioners. Don, Sarah, Jennifer, Stephanie. Hi. Before we get started, I wanted to take a moment to show you something different this year, and you'll notice Brian Kincaid is not with me. Brian's retiring any second, probably in the next 2 weeks. And Erica is our Assistant Chief Information Officer. She's been given a seat to help me lead the organization, and she's here today to meet all of you as well as support me because she was a large part in preparing this budget. So,
Well, let me say, just as a personal aside, you've made an excellent choice. I've known Erica for quite a long time. I'm happy that she was in the organization, and I'm happy to see her continue to elevate. So, congratulations.
thank you. What are we doing first? The operating budget. So our operating budget is up about 8.3%. About a percent and a half or so of that budget is covers a 14-and-a-half-year-old truck that we use to service all of the radio towers that support all the first responders in the county. That truck just needs to be replaced, and that's part of what's driving that number. The rest of it is just there as items that we don't have a whole lot of control over, insurance and those types of things. We are still working toward driving down the unit cost to deliver our services. We know that IT is one of those types of things where if we're doing our job, you don't know we're there, right? It's when we're not doing our job, or we're not doing our job, but when something breaks, you want to make sure we're there and we're competent and able to deal with the situation. But if everything's going well, you just don't know we're there. And we like to keep it that way. So that's how that budget was developed, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions for Mr. Merker?
There are none. Move staff's tentative approval.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Smith for tentative approval of the information technology budget, seconded by Commissioner Hurd. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? That motion carries unanimously. The next one is,
You get a twofer with me. So it's the Technology Investment Plan. And just as a quick recap, the Technology Investment Plan is a mechanism for trying to recognize efficiencies across the organization by combining all the technology purchases into a single budget so that we are make sure that we don't have duplication of services or duplication of costs anywhere. Also, to put some level of governance in place to make sure that all technology that is being acquired by the county meets whatever goals are set out by this commission. You'll notice that there's a 24, almost 25% increase. A lot of that is being driven by three main factors. One is state-mandated cybersecurity initiatives. The second is contracts that we have that we develop on a 3-year basis, rolling and coming due. And this year, for whatever reason, some of the vendors decided that they were entitled to a hefty increase, Microsoft being one of them. And then the third is we have some aging infrastructure that is just sorely in need of replacement, infrastructure that does things like support the databases that run all of the systems that the county depends on. So those are the main drivers of that budget increase. Keeping all of that infrastructure running and keeping all those licenses in place enable all of the departments in this county to get their work done and to deliver services to the citizens and the businesses of Martin County. So it's important that we keep that infrastructure current and running. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
thank you very much. Commissioner Heatherington.
I understand totally that much of what this increase includes is the state mandated changes. But my question is obviously the more robust your system, the more, how did the state kind of levy this equally across the counties? Because there's obviously some very small counties that probably either, are they held to the same standard? Does it depend on what kind of system you have? Because there's a lot of small counties in Florida that I'm wondering how they're getting through this in their budget process, these mandates, because they are very small rural counties. So how does that, how do you apply that? Is every county different and is it dependent on your system that you have in place?
So the state was pretty egalitarian about the way that they went about it. They gave nobody any support, really, for the most part. And yes, every county is held to the same standard. It's a law. The law is the law. There's no differentiation in that law for any size of county or any types of systems that the particular county might be using to support the operations. The only differentiation that I saw was in the cybersecurity law that requires us to report incidents where we might have been attacked. Smaller counties get an extra year to come into compliance. Counties that have 75,000 or less residents have an extra year to come into compliance. Counties over 75,000 residents have to be in place by January 1st. Other than that, there's really no differentiation.
So just to follow up then. So let's just say, and I know this is not the number, but let's just use a number, 2.5 million. That's how much the mandated requirements were for Martin County. Is that the same for Okeechobee County, or is it dependent on how large and robust your system is? Is it going to be, is that across the board? How did they levy that on the counties? I can't imagine that every county's paying the same to bring their system up to whatever the state mandated it. Does that make sense, my question?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, but I'm trying to think of a good analogy for that. What you're saying makes sense and is correct. I would suggest that if you were to look at a place like, and I'm just going to pick a place at random because I like the name, Treasure Island, okay? And that is a real place in Florida. They have 3 IT staff and a very, very small population. They're certainly not going to be spending $2 million to bring their systems up because they don't have the same breadth of systems. For every computer that we have on the desk, we have that we're responsible for, it's roughly, I think it's 1,800 desktop computers. We have to have antivirus, and we have to have security and all these other protections. They have 10. So there's a scale. Yeah, absolutely.
How robust your system is.
Correct.
It's available. The more, people and gadgets, the more really you're going to have to invest.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Smith?
I don't know this, but it also wouldn't surprise me that the fiscally constrained counties didn't get some sort of assistance from the state in order to achieve some of the standards. I mean, that's a typical, on a requirement this large, it could be that large, but I don't know.
Well, there was a program put forth by the state to provide a certain level of assistance, but it was geared toward the smaller counties. So for example, the requirements were outrageous in terms, to me at least, and that's an opinion, in terms of the types of reporting that had to be done and the legal agreements. I was confident that our legal department would have a very, very difficult time with the legal agreements that were there. And I would also tell you that I went to the Florida Local Government Information Systems Association conference last week, and many of my peers who had applied for that grant, those grants that were awarded, walked away from them because of the reporting requirements, because of the legal requirements and the constraints that were in there. So there was money made available to some of those smaller counties. Some of them took advantage of it, and some didn't.
Mr. Merkirk, beyond just servicing our employees within the county, what constitutionals do you work for as well?
All of them, in varying degrees. So, for example, the tax collector, we're their internet service provider and their phone system. If you look at the clerk of courts, their finance department, we are their IT department. So it goes, there's a range.
So all of them?
Yes.
I think that bears people understand that it's not just within the organization of the county government, that you also branch out. Anybody else?
19th Judicial Circuit. And then we do provide some services for some of the municipalities, but they also pay for some of those services as well.
Mm-hmm. But your scope and breadth is to City of Stewart, some Sewell's Point, how about Indiantown?
No, we don't provide services to Indiantown. Okay. Sewell's Point, City of Stewart.
Island?
Jupiter Island.
Ocean Breeze?
Yes.
Fantastic. So it's a big footprint. Commissioner Heatherington?
One final question. Do you see any, that you're aware of, future legislative mandates that we haven't addressed? Talks coming down the pipeline that we should be aware of and/or maybe put in our legislative priorities to monitor?
Nothing that I've noticed. I'm famous among my peers for keeping an eye on this type of thing, and I'm usually the first one to raise an issue amongst my peers when this type of legislation is even proposed. And I haven't seen anything as of yet. I think they're probably taking a breath and trying to, at the state level, trying to figure out how they're going to actually implement a lot of the laws that they put in there, because I think they're finding that they asked for a lot of information and a lot of participation, and they weren't prepared for the volume of work that they have to do on their side.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's entertain motions.
I'll move tentative approval.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Heatherington for tentative approval of the technology investment plan, seconded by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries unanimously. At this point, what we're going to do is stop for the lunch break. It's a couple of minutes after 12 o'clock. Let's come back at 1:30, and we'll pick it up from there. Excuse me, let's make that 2 o'clock, please.